Okay, guys. So today the focus will shift from surface area to volume. Um, Again, in my opinion, I think volume is easier because there's a formula that you can use that directly gives you the volume, right? Surface area, you have to find the area of the base separately, and then you have to find the lateral area, and then add them up. With volume, that's not the case. So I am hoping today's class will be hopefully slightly shorter, um, and it will hopefully make a little bit more sense than yesterday's class. So I did not receive any emails. So like I said, guys, if you have questions, please send me emails. So when I don't receive emails, that kind of is a good indication, I guess, because it tells me that my students are understanding, right? But if you're not understanding, then I would really appreciate if you could just send me an email, okay, so that I can host webinars. There will be one on Thursday for students who need more help. And I can see how many students are viewing my YouTube videos, right? And I know that for my 10C class, there should be at least 60 of you, right? Because I have 30 students in each class, but that's not what I'm getting, okay? I'm not getting 60, I'm getting closer to like 45. So if you are planning on doing last minute work, it's not going to work out for you, okay? Um, I could have scheduled the quiz on Thursday because on Thursday there's nothing new to learn, but I'm being nice, right? Instead of giving you a quiz on Thursday, I'm just holding office hours, right? And the quiz will be given to you for homework. But now that I see that some students are not taking this seriously, so what I will do is I will make the quiz due on Friday at midnight, okay? So I don't want you to fall behind. I want you to watch my videos daily so that you don't get overwhelmed, okay? So for the starter question, for this one, I'm not gonna ask you to pause and do it yourself, unless you wanna give it a shot. It's fine. Let's just do this together, okay? So how do you solve a question like this, okay? So volume, the formula for volume is always the same. Volume is always equals to the area of the base times your height, okay? I'm gonna use capital H, and this will make more sense, I guess, a little later. Because remember, with the pyramid, right, the height can be confusing, the slant height and the height of the pyramid. Um, so that's why I'm using capital H. Anyway, you pick your base, okay? You could pick whatever you want to be your base. But for me, like, I am just gonna choose this to be my base, okay? So this is my base. Okay, so if I'm picking this to be my base, then this over here will be my height, right? It's just I guess the numbers are really visible, so it's really easy to choose this to be my base. And then if this is my base, then height is always the difference if you want between. Um, so your base is always connected if you want to your second base, right? Let's go. So these two surfaces will always be connected with your height, okay? So whatever you pick your base to be, the height will always connect your two bases, okay? So I'm going to proceed this way, but just to answer your question, because I know some people really like to choose the base to be the part that touches, the bottom surface, I guess, the surface that touches the ground. So if you choose this to be your base, which you can, right? Then that means that this will be your height, okay? Doesn't matter how you do it, at the end of the day, you're gonna get the same answer, okay? This one is will also work, but you'll just have to understand that this side over here is actually the same as this side, right? So this has to be 3. It's a little less obvious, which is why I chose to do the question a little differently, and I'm gonna do it that way, okay? It doesn't matter. You're gonna get the same answer at the end, so it doesn't matter how you do it, okay? So let's just pick this to be my base because all the numbers are given, right? I have my length, I have my width, and right, so if that's my base, technically you have 2 bases, right? So this will be my second base, right? So kind of like if you want, this is your ceiling, this is your ceiling, right? And this is kind of like the floor, okay? So those are your 2 bases. So how do you find the area of the base? Area of the base, so my base over here, right, is a rectangle, so area of base is just equals to length times width, or base times height, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so it's just going to be 3 times 4, which will give me 12. Okay, now you don't have to multiply this by 2. We're not finding the surface area, right? You're just finding the area of one of your bases. Okay, so don't multiply it by 2, keep the 12. So find the area of one of the bases, and that is it. Okay, and then multiply that by your height. Okay, so volume is just equals to area of base, which is 12, right? And let me just use a different color to kind of like help you a little bit. So let's just choose the height to be blue. Okay, in blue, and then I'm gonna do the same thing over here to be consistent. So my height is in blue, and if you right look at that number, then you'll know that your height is 7. So the area is 12 times 7, which is I think 84. Okay, 84. Now the units are not given, right? So you don't have to put the units, but if you are getting really technical, if you put this as your final answer, I'm just going to give you 4 marks because the units are not given to begin with. Okay, so you know what? Let's not make it too complicated. If the units are not given, then don't put the units. Okay. But for those of you who are interested, what would you do in a situation like this? You can just say units squared. Okay, so whatever the units is, you have to square that. Okay, so but I'm not gonna dock any marks. Okay, now this idea, right? So this is a rectangular prism, but this idea can be extended to um, any prism. Okay, this is a right prism with a triangular base. Okay, it's still a prism, but your base is a triangle. Now here you have to be careful because you can't choose this to be your base. Okay, you cannot choose this to be your base. Your base has to be um, parallel. The surface of the base has to be parallel to one another. Okay, so the only surfaces that are parallel to one another are these two triangles. Okay, because the rectangles are kind of inclined, so you cannot choose that to be your base. Okay, so here your base is the triangle. So sometimes it might be difficult to identify the base, right? But remember, your two bases will be parallel, like the surfaces will be parallel. So you can think of the base as the ceiling and the floor, right? So the ceiling and the floor are parallel to each other, right? Um, the the roof is never crooked, right? It's always straight, just as straight as the floor. Okay. And for the cylinder, it's the same thing, right? Your bases now, the only difference is that your bases will now be a circle, right? And again, these two surfaces are parallel to each other. Okay. Um, so it's the same formula that you'll have to use. Okay, so area again is just volume is just find the area of the base and then multiply it by the height. Okay, that's the formula. So the tricky part, I guess, is to identify what the base is. But like I said, they have to be parallel to each other. Okay, and I'm hoping that kind of makes sense. Okay, so AB is just area of base, just like yesterday. If you want, I can write this down for you. Area of base. Okay, and h is your height. Okay, now for this question, the first question, right, you can choose your base to be whatever, because if you choose this to be your base, then this is, you can call this your floor, and this is the surface that's parallel to that. That would work. Here it's pretty straightforward. You can pick anything to be your base. Okay, but in this situation, only the triangles are parallel to each other. So your base has to be a triangle. Okay, but what I'm gonna do is, because the 10 and the 12 is given to me, I'm gonna choose this to be my base. Okay, so the formula tells me that volume, I'm just gonna use V for volume, is AB times H. Okay, so this is my height, right? Because the height connects um, the floor and the ceiling, if you want, right? Okay, so I'm gonna erase that because my second base is kind of irrelevant. I'm just showing you how to get the height. Okay, so this is your height. And then the area of the base, so let's do the calculation on the side over here, is just equals to length times width, or base times height, however you want to do it. So it's just going to be 10 times 12, which is 120, okay? Now, 120 times h, which is 16, will give me my volume, okay? So I'm actually going to grab a calculator. So 120 times 16 is 1,920. 1,920. Now, because my units are given in feet, so this will have to be feet cubed, which means that I made a mistake in my starter question, right? So, because we're not finding area, we're actually finding volume. I can ask you to change this to units cubed, right? It has to be cubed. Sorry about that. So, I just realized I made that mistake. Okay. So for the second question, right, it's a cylinder. When you have a cylinder, your base will always be a circle. Okay, so this is your base. It's the same formula. Okay, so volume is equals to area of base times height. Okay, now this 16, right, over here is your diameter, right? So 16 is the diameter of the circle. So that means your radius, which is half, right, has to equals to 8. So we're gonna make use of this fact. Okay. So area of base, because it's a circle, is just pi r squared. Pi is a constant, right? It has an approximate value of 3.14. And then times, you could use brackets. You could just put a dot, however you want to do it, 8 squared. And you know what? I should maybe use approximation. I was watching yesterday's videos. I didn't put approximation, right? But I think it's so those squiggly equal sign means it's just an approximation, okay? Because pi is not 3.14 times 8 squared, and you get 200.96, okay? So area of base is 200.96, and I have to multiply that by h. So h is this, right? It connects my two bases together, right? The ceiling and the floor, which is 4. So I multiply this by 4, I'm going to get my volume, okay? So 200.96 times 4 is actually 803.84 units is meters, so meters cubed, okay? Now, so when it comes to cylinder and the prism, finding the volume is easy because you just have to find the area of the base and then you multiply it by the height, okay? Because it's as if you're stacking, right? So this rectangle over here, it's as if you're stacking one rectangle on top of the other, right? And when you stack enough of them, you're gonna get a prism, okay? Same thing with the cylinder, right? You're just stacking one circle on top of another, and eventually it becomes a cylinder, okay? So you just have to multiply the area of the base times how many bases you're stacking, right? Which is your height. Okay, so that's the logic. Okay, now when it comes to cones and pyramids, it's slightly difficult. Okay, slightly difficult because well, I mean, if you know what the formula is, then it's not that difficult. But I'm actually going to show you something. Okay, so this cone, if I stack one circle on top of another, then I'm actually going to get a cylinder, right? So this cone can be turned into a cylinder. Not the best drawing. Let me just try my best over here, right? And as you can see, you have one piece over here. This is the second piece. This is 3, okay? So inside a cylinder, you can actually fit 3 cones, okay? So that's why the volume of a cone is the same as the volume for a cylinder, which is just area of base times height, right? This gives you the volume of the cylinder, but then you have to divide by 3 because as you can see, you can kind of like put 3 cones in there. It's the same thing for a pyramid, right? A pyramid, it can actually be turned into a prism if you want, right? Something like this. And again, I'm not an expert when it comes to drawing, so that was really poorly done. But I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that inside a prism, right, you can actually put um, 3 pyramids in there, okay? So that's why you're dividing by 3. You don't need to understand all this stuff, right? If you are comfortable with just applying the formula, then you're good to go, okay? Just remember that the cone and pyramid, you have to divide by 3, okay? But for the prism and cylinder, you don't have to, okay? And these formulas will be given to you. But because your test is open book, I'm not going to be giving any formulas, okay? You kind of need to look through your notes and figure that out, okay? So this is the formula for pyramid and cone, okay? So let's do some examples. Oh yeah, key thing to note from yesterday's class, right? Your height, they're using small h. If you want, right? If you want, what I want you to do, because I didn't draw the picture, change this small h to big H, okay? And this one too, change it to big H, because this height is the height of your cone, okay? So sometimes to throw you off, what they will do is to throw you off, they will give you the slant height, okay? They might, so you know what? I'm just gonna put the H here, right? And I'm gonna do the same thing with my pyramid. Just gonna erase this, okay? And put my H over here. So what if they give you the slant height? What if they give you this height? Um, which connects like the top part of your triangle, right? The apex to the base of the triangle. Now this is your small h, right? If that is given and you're finding the surface area, then that's good news. But if you're not finding the surface area, then you'll have to use the Pythagorean theorem to find your height, the actual height of the pyramid. And I think there's an example today that we're going to do that will give you small h just to throw you off. Don't use that h, okay? You have to use capital H, okay? So be careful with that. It's kind of like a trap if you want, okay? So you see, I'm talking about this question, okay? So the problem with this question is because it's a pyramid, right? You should know that I'm gonna find the area of the base, multiply this by the height, and divide by 3, okay? Because again, I can fit 3 pyramids inside one prism, okay? So kind of like something like this. Okay, I was finally able to draw it. Okay, it's just something like that, okay? So that's why you're dividing by 3. Now, the problem is I don't have capital H, right? I don't have capital H. What I have is this, which is small h, which is my slant height, okay? So how can I find the height of my pyramid? Well, just like yesterday's class, I'm actually going to use Pythagorean theorem, right? So my actual height starts from the vertex, goes all the way to the center of my base, okay? And then I can connect, so I'm going to use a different color. I can connect this center to the middle of my triangle, right? And what you have in red over here, right? This is your slant height, okay? So if I draw this triangle, remember this side is, um, so, right, so let's use purple. This side is 4, but I am only using half that length, right? So if I draw the triangle, it's not going to be 4, right? So this blue line is the height that I'm interested in. This purple line is I'm talking about this one, okay? So this purple line is half this purple line, right? So this has to be 2, right? And then finally, you connect this red line over here, so to get the triangle, okay? And this is because this is your height, right? There's a 90-degree over here, so this is a right angle triangle, and your slant height is given to you. It's 6, right? So you can actually use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out what the value of h is, okay? So let's just call this A. Let's call this B. And remember, C is always opposite to the right angle. So this has to be C, okay? A and B are irrelevant. I could have called this, right? I could have easily chosen this to be B and this to be A. It would have still worked, okay? It doesn't matter how you label A and B. But what's crucial is to understand what your C is when you're using the Pythagorean theorem. And how do you find C? Find the right angle. Whatever is opposite to the right angle will always be your C value, okay? So let's apply the theorem. So I know that a squared plus b squared is equals to c squared, right? Using the Pythagorean theorem. I don't know what a squared is, so I'm just going to leave it like that. B is 2, so b squared will be 2 squared. And c is 6, right? So when you simplify this, a squared, remember 2 squared is 2 times 2, which gives you 4. And 6 squared is 6 times 6, not 6 times 2, right? Squared means multiplying the base by itself. So this is 36. And then if you solve for, so now my goal is to solve for a, right? So you're going to have to do a little bit of algebra. So if I can get rid of this 4, not this. So let me change the color, right? If I can get rid of this 4, then I'm going to have a squared by itself, which is what I want, right? So how do you get rid of the 4? Do the opposite. The opposite of plus is minus, and you do minus. So this disappears, and then you have a squared is equals to 32, okay? But I am not interested in a squared, I'm actually interested in 8, right? So you have to get rid of your squared by taking the inverse. The inverse of squared is square root. So a is just equals to, it's approximately, right? It's going to be an irrational number. Square root of 32 is 5. Let's just go with 5.66. Okay, so again, you can use, I like to use 2 digits, but if you're using 1, that's fine. Doesn't really matter because we're using that, we're using an approximation. Okay, so I prefer 2 digits because it's going to be a little bit more precise. Okay, and now I have everything. Okay, so I know that my h, right, is actually equals to 5.66. So if I use the formula, right, this one, so I guess what I should do is find the area of the base. Okay, area of the base, let's just do that calculation separately. And let me just remove the arrow because I'm gonna be using that in a moment. So I know I've so I'm gonna erase all this stuff, right? So I know that this is a square pyramid, right? So if this is 4, that has to be 4, okay? So the area, so let me just click on back, get those things back. So I know that this is 4 because I couldn't see it initially. That also has to be 4. The area of the base is just 4 times 4, which is 16, right? Now to get the volume, right? So to get the volume, I'm going to use that formula. So the area of the base is 16 times my height, which I calculated using the Pythagorean theorem, is 5.66. And then you have to divide by 3 because remember, you can actually fit 3 pyramids inside a prism, okay? So 16 times 5.66 divided by 3 will give me approximately, right? Approximately a value of 30.19, okay? And because my units were in inches, this will just be inch cubed, okay? Because remember, volume is 3-dimensional, right? So you have to cube your units, okay? So this was slightly challenging, right? Because they were tricking you, right? They were giving you the slant height um, intentionally so that you make the mistake. But, right, I'm hoping that you're not going to make the mistake because there's a difference between the slant height and the height of your object. So the slant height, useful for surface area, um, but not for volume, okay? And I mentioned this yesterday. So let's move on. The next questions are not going to be that difficult, right? Because as you can see, right, the difference between that question and this one is that now you're given your actual height. If you were not given, then you would have to use the Pythagorean theorem, okay? So you know that it's a cone and you can fit 3 cones inside a cylinder, right? So volume is just equals to area of the base times height, and then you divide by 3, okay? So the tricky part is to realize that, the 12 is your diameter. So the radius, right, that means the radius of the circle has to be equals to 6. Okay, so area of the base, right, because my base is a circle, I'm going to use this formula, pi r squared, right? I know that pi has an approximate value of 3.14, and I'm going to multiply this by 6 squared. So this just becomes approximately 3.14 times 36, which will approximately give me, what is it? 3.14 times 36. 113.04. Okay? And now let's apply the formula. So the formula tells me that I have to multiply the area of the base, which I know now, 113.04, by the height, which is given to me in this case directly, so just 18, right? Capital H, right? Careful. And then divide by 3. So your volume will be approximately 113 times 18, divide by 3, which is 678.24, again, inch cubed, okay? Because I'm running out of space, I'm going to write the units down here. And that is it. Okay, so the formula kind of tells you what needs to be done. Find the area of the base, right? If the base is a circle, then use the formula for circle, right? If it's a square, then use the formula for square. If it's a rectangle, then rectangle. If it's triangle, then triangle, right? And then just make sure that your H is capital H, right? Which is the height of the object, not your slant height, okay? Careful, if they give you the slant height, then you will have to use the Pythagorean theorem, okay? Which is kind of what I did in this question, okay? And when you use the Pythagorean theorem, you have to be careful because this length over here will always be half of the whole thing, okay? So this is 12 and this has to be 6, okay? So when you're using the Pythagorean theorem, make sure to divide that by 2, okay? Whatever that is. So in this question, for example, right, this was 4, so that had to be 2, okay? So that's something to watch out for. And I think that is it, guys. Okay, so homework, I want you to practice a little bit. So do these questions. Again, volume is not too difficult because you don't have to find the area of the base separately and the lateral area separately and then add everything together. There's one formula that gives you the area directly. It's just a question of understanding, should I use this formula? Volume is equals to area of base times height, or should I use volume is equals to area of base times height divided by 3? Okay, you only divide by 3 if it's a cone, because remember, you can fit 3 cones inside a cylinder, or if it's a pyramid, because pyramid is also kind of like a cone, you can fit 3 pyramids inside a prism, okay? That's why there's a divide by 3, okay? So 2 formulas, and make sure you're using capital H, right? So capital H will help you distinguish the height of the object from the slant height, okay? I hope this kind of made sense. I'm not receiving any emails, guys, so I'm hoping everything is making sense. But if it's not, right, please let me know. Please let me know so that I can, so that I don't have to wait until Thursday to hold my office hours, right? I can do this tomorrow. And whenever you need my help, just let me know, okay? Don't be shy. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Have a nice day.